How are you doing today?
Good, other than I'm joining you from our server room. So we are out of conference rooms. So sorry, I got a funny background.
Oh yeah. If you want to just like maybe introduce yourself, what you do, where you're at right now, that'd be perfect.
Um, I got my undergrad in mechanical engineering at BYU. I think in reviewing your questions, I was trying to think when is the first time I heard of technology transfer at all, like in general. I think in my undergrad, I may have had a glimpse or heard of something. Invented a few things in undergrad that was considering patenting. And I believe, I don't remember specifically, but I do remember, seems like that may have been the first context. Um, anyway, I became a new product developer for a company. I actually worked in Tijuana, Mexico, and lived in San Diego. So I was kind of a bit of a I was looking for an alternative path to begin with, perhaps instead of working for a Fortune 100 company in a fairly sterile, typical environment. I was looking for something slightly more adventurous, perhaps. So I was a new product developer for a sporting good company called Easton Sports, and so that was kind of a riot, just because I got to go to Mexico every single day, and it was like lived in San Diego in La Jolla, but worked in Tijuana, Mexico. So it was every day. It was just kind of extremes. Then I ended up starting a new factory in China. So a company, a private equity backed company, acquired a business. They needed somebody to transfer that production from San Diego to China, and so I got hired to do that, which was way beyond my pay grade, but they gave me a chance, and was able to do it, and had a great experience. And then that's kind of when I started turning the dark side of business, like officially, as far as my time as an engineer was pretty well done at that point. And so then a gentleman who I'd met some years before, who had tried to hire me, uh, asked me if I'd come run his company, one of his companies in Los Angeles. And so from China, moved to LA, and ran a kind of a metals specialty component manufacturer, and a very niche business. Um, so that was my first chance running a company, which was awesome, scary, just exciting, but daunting, all the above. But doubled that business in the first year, thinking a bit outside the box, which has kind of been my MO all along the way, is kind of look at things slightly differently, and consider options, ways and means to improve, service the market differently than just what is normally done. Anyway, and then at that point, business was growing. Things were going extremely well. I wanted a piece of the pie. The owner he wholly owned that business and a number of others. And I wanted some equity stake in it. Was not of interest to him. And so I was like, you know what? I've never taken a business class before. Here I am running a company, doing well, but never actually taken a business class. So I wanted to go back and get some further education. So I decided to get my MBA. And that's kind of when I first really learned at the tech transfer office, like really in depth, was in looking at the schools I was considering going to for MBA school. University of California, San Diego, not very well known in the MBA kind of rankings, but it certainly wasn't back then. Their entire program was actually wrapped around taking technologies out of the tech transfer office, which still have never heard of any other MBA program doing that. But me having at least, I knew what tech transfer meant, I believe, but so I actually considered going there heavily. They offered me a full ride scholarship there, and the entire program again was to take core curriculum, but then you'd pick a technology out of the tech transfer office, and then you would use it as a real world practicum in all of your classes moving forward. So building a business plan, the financials, the resources, HR, marketing, entrepreneurial strategy, didn't really matter. Anyway, ended up deciding to go to BYU for my MBA after all, but I had this kind of bug of wanting to, or looking at the tech transfer as a place to find technologies to bring to market. And then, I think it was my first or second week at BYU MBA school. I went into the tech transfer office. That's when I met Dave Brown, but I've met with Mike Alder to start with. Dave has, his position now, which is awesome. But yeah, so kind of blending some of those details together. But I went to the tech transfer office. I said, I'm an MBA student. I already ran a company. I want your list. Can I see your list of technologies? Mike gave me chips and salsa and some candy or something. I can't remember. Anyway, he pulls out this list and gave it to me. And he said, if anything looks interesting to you, come back. And so I reviewed quite a few, came back with some questions, and then ended up finding a technology that I really wanted to find out more about that kind of fit some of my background, some of my education. And then it kind of went from there. So got my MBA, was building a company while getting my MBA. I did the UC San Diego experience, but at BYU. So
That's the both.
what was that?
That's the both worlds right there.
It was awesome because again, taking my classes, I looked at it very differently. One, I'd already ran a company before, and two, what I was learning, I was trying to apply for a company I was building while going to school, which made it all the more valuable. So I wish BYU would or could do a similar type of program. That's why, like, internships and getting more students involved with what Tech Transfer Office has and other entrepreneurs is huge, because it really needs to be that partnership, Anyway, since then, I've been an entrepreneur, took a technology, like I said, out of BYU's Tech Transfer Office. I won BYU's business plan competition with it, raised some venture capital, funded research at BYU, started off that business, almost got acquired multiple times. I almost retired in 6 months of work. So that would have been, which did not happen, but that's a pretty common tale of entrepreneurship. To think I could have retired before I even graduated from MBA school was kind of a crazy sort of thing. But we were one signature away. So, I mean, it was very close. So since then, I have done, I guess I have directly started 2 businesses out of BYU's Tech Transfer Office. I've been involved in acquiring technology out of multiple tech transfer offices, probably 4 or 5 times. And I currently run a tech transfer backed BYU transfer originated company. And we got acquired about 6 months ago from a much larger company. So anyway, so there's a little bit of all of the above.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And just to bounce back a little to how you first, or like when you first found out about the tech transfer office, what was like the first thing that made you interested in the tech transfer office?
So I did engineering, and I like ideas, and I have a lot of my own ideas. And I wanted to take some of my own ideas perhaps to market. But when I found out, the tech transfer office holds inventions that PhD level geniuses have done, I'm like, well, I don't really consider myself a genius in that way. I don't really want a PhD in nanotechnology or PhD in computer vision or software. But I love new technology, and I love the idea of commercializing it, scaling it, taking it to market. So when I learned again that it's available and without money, now obviously I worked in BYU's Tech Transfer Office for a year. Don't know if you guys knew that or not. So Dave Brown and I were actually colleagues for a year. I've been on both sides of the fence. But to know that, again, there's innovation, there's patents, there's technology that millions of dollars may have been spent on that you could get access to and try to take to market without having spent a dime. of actual money. I mean, I was like, why doesn't the whole world know this? And the reality is the government spends billions and billions and billions of dollars creating technology that never see the light of day, that are also sitting there available. And the reality is just most people don't know about it. BYU tends to do a way, way better job. Biased, both being a customer of the tech transfer office as well as an employee, but data would show that BYU's tech transfer office does a statistically significant, like by factors, better job at commercializing technology and communicating, getting that technology out there than most other offices do. But what's not to love, right? Great technologies, genius people, but usually need a businessman to figure out how to bring it to market, how to commercialize it.
That's super interesting about all those technologies. Kind of to pivot a little bit, but we'd love to hear more about your time at Smart Vision Works.
Yeah. So I already helped scale a couple of startups. I was in between. Frankly, I was taking a break a bit between my last startup. We grew about 10x. Been there 4 years. Was traveling an insane amount. Had a team all over the world. So I decided, you know what? So I took some time off, which was wonderful. But I wanted to do something on my own again. Not working for someone else per se, or a startup that's led by somebody else. So I went to the tech transfer. I was doing consulting for multiple different startups, kind of just keep life interesting a bit. The tech transfer office introduced me to Smart Vision Works, and that Smart Vision Works was looking for a kind of a CEO person, sales, someone who knew how to scale technology. And so I took Dave's recommendation quite seriously, and I came and met with the team, and that was 6 years ago. I already knew about the technology from when I worked at the tech transfer office, but I didn't know what they had done with it since. And anyway, so when I came here, I was a consultant. They couldn't afford me, frankly. They couldn't afford anybody. They were fairly cash flow even or negative. And I fell in love with the technology and the team and the passion. And I thought, this is a gold mine that's just not being mined in the most effective way. And so I joined forces with them. And the reality is somewhat of the secret of our success is they were using the technology to help other companies as a service, meaning company would say, hey, I've got this problem. Can you fix it? And they would say, sure, $160 an hour. We'll work on your problem, and then we'll deliver you a solution. And a lot of times the BYU technology was used to give them a solution. But that was it. It was like having a new a dental tool and being a dentist and saying, okay, I got this cool tool that helps me do everything better. But they're not selling the tool to anybody else. They're just using it themselves to do a better job in their dental office. So your growth is fairly limited to how many patients can you have in one dental office. It's sort of a analogy. So we pivoted and decided they'd been running for 6 years. We took all the technology that they'd created and we put it into a package and off the shelf kind of solution. So instead of engineering services, we didn't. So by the way, now we do none. Like if someone comes to us and says, will you work on an hourly rate? The answer is absolutely no. Whereas when I got here, it was 100% of their money was kind of like a dentist. I'll charge $160 an hour. We'll give you solutions. So now we have a product called Sift AI, which is a vision system. It's basically an AI enabled vision system in a box. It's got a camera, it's got a computer, it's got a server, it's got the AI software, everything you need to be successful in AI and vision is all in a box. And then we've 10x'd the business since then, kind of doing this pivot, right? A different business model, a different approach to the market. And that's kind of what's led to our growth is now we can service our customers. When they call and say, I've got a problem, 90% of the work is done. We pull it off the shelf. and the software off the shelf and say, okay, we have to do just a little bit of modeling, and then we can give them a solution instead of charging them, say, $150,000 in research at $160 an hour and figure it out. And so anyway, now we have 50 employees. Even after the acquisition, I'm still in essence the CEO or the president, but now we're owned by a parent company. And we focus primarily, another major point, I guess, is they were fairly defocused. When I got here, they were doing ammunition inspection, golf ball tracking, library archiving, cardboard warpage, date fruit sorting, all kinds of random markets, shrimp. And so after looking at the market and exploring a little bit, we decided, you know what, we're going to focus on agriculture and food, farm to fork. That's it. That's where the origination of the technology came from. That's what everyone's real core competency was. And so we give you example, I don't think this is too confidential. Tempur Sealy, the world's largest mattress company, came to us and asked us if we could inspect their mattresses. I'm like, interesting, but we turned it down because it's like it's not agriculture. It's not farm to fork. It's not going to help us. No food. Nestle's not going to say, "Oh, cool, you're inspecting mattresses." They don't care about that. So we turned down quite a bit of work at a risk to pick up more food and agriculture customers. And so that's what we do 100% now. And we could be a $100 million business just doing food alone.
We'd also love to hear your input on what you think makes BYU so entrepreneurial.
Yeah, that is a great question. Perhaps it's also partially linked to why is Utah and the LDS Church so predominant in multi-level marketing companies. So most of it's good. Some of it's could be good, could be bad. I think as a people, we're born and raised to be able to communicate with each other. People that go on missions, even who don't, most people are raised having callings, having leadership responsibilities, doing budgets, planning activities, solving problems, dealing with difficult people, both your own age group as well as you may have had a leader who was really annoying or maybe was awesome. I had some absolutely phenomenal, like I saw one the other day by total coincidence, who was one of my young men's leaders, and we still remembered each other. Haven't spoken in 40 years or something. But I still remember some of the things I learned from him. So I guess what I'm saying is sort of the cultural upbringing and the opportunities, leadership opportunities are kind of instilled in our culture. I am LDS, so, serving a mission. I mean, my gosh, like you learn so much on your mission about, people come to you with marriage problems and you're like, I'm 19 years old. I've never even had a serious girlfriend. Why are you asking me about marriage? But you dig for resources, you ask questions. You're like, how can I help? What can I do? So I think a lot of those things, not that you have to have those things, but it helps. I think statistically, it improves this community's chance of being successful in entrepreneurship. And I think that's part and parcel why there's such a strong vein of entrepreneurship in the LDS community and at BYU in general is we're curious, we're rooted in lots of opportunities of leadership and, whether people why has there been so many members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on America's Got Talent or something? You sing from the time you're in your nursery, for crying out loud. I mean, like we're all trained to sing from the time we're 2 years old. So I mean, of course we're going to be good at basketball and singing, and so entrepreneurship perhaps is one of those things. Very smart group of people. Perhaps another is I consider myself a realistic optimist, but also a very calculated risk taker. Our behavior, our life choices, I think, tend to lend itself to entrepreneurship also, in the form of, we're fairly good savers. Tithing teaches you to, keep track of what you spend and live within your means. I mean, at least it helps, right? It's not that we all do that, or not everyone's successful at that, but we're calculated risk takers, and you see these entrepreneurial stories of, people go crazy, right? They go off the deep end, lose their way, have no foundation, or lose their foundation, or, I think we as a culture, as a people, are fairly well grounded. Anyway, to calculate risks, to take ones that are worth it, that don't sacrifice our families, don't sacrifice, your life. Anyway, I'm going to bungee cord off a 5,000 foot cliff to try to grab $100 bill or something. I don't know, just maybe that's preposterous, but anyway, I think that being very philosophical here, but being rooted in a more important foundation, I think, helps in entrepreneurship also.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree on that as well. And just expanding with that as well, what made you want to be an entrepreneur in your life?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it all. My first recollection of being an entrepreneur is 5th grade. So, I mean, I'm sure I did other things prior to this, but I remember being able to buy a bag of Black Forest gummy bears for $1.25. This was before gummy bears were super popular in the U.S., but my dad was a military man, so we could go to the commissary and pay $1.25 for same bag they sell today in the dollar store. Irony, but I could buy a bag for $1.25. They were made in Germany, brought to the U.S., and I brought them to school, and I knew our lunch at school was 65 cents. So subsidized, right? It wasn't. So every kid had $1 for lunch every day. And I knew everyone had 35 cents and change every single day. So I bought a bag of gummy bears. I brought it to school, and I said, hey, gummy bears for a nickel or 6 for a quarter. And, I sold half the bag, made $1.50, and had half the bag for myself left. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then someone was like, oh, that's business. That's entrepreneurship. And I'm like, what? Like, what? That's a thing. So, I think some of the characteristics are from early on, right? I mean, I don't know, was born this way. Others is wanting to make a difference. Give you an example. I have friends who, very, very good friends, who they look at me and they say, oh my gosh, I wish, you're so lucky. You've had such an awesome, fun life. And I wish I would have been an entrepreneur. And, it just looks so fun. And, and it's like, they're in a job, like they've been at Boeing their whole careers, sat at the same desk. They've worked on the same problem. Maybe they've gone from, junior engineer to senior engineer to engineering manager to engineering director, but they've really done the same thing most of their career, right? And they'll look at me and say, oh my gosh, like you've had so much fun. You've done all these crazy things. And then I look at the other side of the fence and I'm like, yeah, well, I've had how many businesses fail? I have worried about whether I'm going to be able to make the mortgage, whether I'm able to pay my employees. So you have to be comfortable. And so why did I pick entrepreneurship? That the standard job would bore me to death. And I did a couple internships where I had a standard kind of job. My soul was being crushed slowly. So I think I picked entrepreneurship for the opportunity to make a difference, to have lots of different responsibilities, lots of different roles, learn. I love to continuously learn. Put me in a job where I'm not going to learn, and I literally, I think I would just die an early death because it'd just be boring. Like, so yeah, so maybe sense of adventure, continuous learning, making a difference. Maybe those are the top three. At Boeing, right? It's like, okay, I don't show up for work for a month, and they're probably like, Chris Bryant, did he work here? I don't even remember. Like, I mean, it's like, unfortunately, whereas at a startup, Chris Bryant doesn't show up for 3 hours, and sometimes people are freaking out, right? Because you just don't, I mean, I may be doing HR, I may be doing finance, I may be selling, I may be building a vision system. Just every day is, you got to add value. So that's exciting.
Awesome. That's really interesting to hear. The gummy bear story is hilarious.
And it is flat out true. Navy Elementary. I can't forget it. Like, so I think I ended up selling like 4 bags, but it was too much of a bother. Not enough margin, so I stopped.
You do it more than enough for you. That's awesome.
I couldn't move to cases. So
something Dave told us a little about was your philosophy with deal making. Do you want to kind of explain that and kind of go a little bit more into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought a lot about this question, and this is probably not unique to me necessarily, but I am definitely a long-term value player, not short-term gains. And that is almost always, I think, a better strategy. Not always, nothing's ever 100%, but I don't trade short-term gains for long-term benefit. And so sometimes telling a customer that you don't have the right solution is the right thing. Overcharging a customer because you know you can is not always the right thing. And so in deal making, I want it sincerely to add value to my customer, period. If it's not, it's likely to be a short-term gain. If you don't have a vision to how it's going to add value to a customer, you're likely to have a pissed off customer who is going to, and hinder your success in the future. And so a good deal is something that adds value to your customer and it adds value to your company. Now, what that value is, sometimes it's money, most of the time it's money. Sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's testimonials, sometimes it's proof of concept, sometimes it's helps you grow. Sometimes it's we want to develop that. You'll pay for some of that. Oh, okay. So it's trading value, long-term value for both organizations. And then the other is, a fair negotiation, as I've heard, and I tend to agree, is when both parties feel like they gave up a little too much, but they're still happy that they did it. And so that tends to be a good metric, right? If you negotiate so hard that the other party is just frustrated and at the verge of just giving up and saying, this guy is so hard to work with, or this company is so hard to work with, I just don't even care anymore. Not a good deal. Even if it happens, generally not a good deal. And for both sides, right? And so making sure there's some significant value, enough value added to both parties, and that both parties say, you know what, yeah, probably gave up a little too much, but it's a good deal. If both parties feel that way, probably a good transaction, probably a good deal to do.
Well, that's a great philosophy. Thank you for sharing that with us. And just in closing, we would just love to ask what you wish you knew when you were starting out.
This is a hard one. I'll tell you why. Maybe different from what might appear, but sometimes the entrepreneurial spirit is driven by ignorance, and that's a good thing. Not always, but it's a good thing. If I say, I'm going to invent cold fusion, which something impossible, right? Something's been proven impossible forever. Entrepreneurial spirit and drive and passion may not help if, I'm trying to go after something that's impossible. But so, yeah, what I wish I would have known is hard, because some of my ignorance is what has led to some of my success. If I knew everything I knew now, would I do what I've done, some of the startups that I have done? Had I known what I was going to have to go through specifically, ooh, you know, so do I want to know everything, everything I know now? Back then, no, because I think some of that boldness, some of that excitement, some of that ignorance in a good way, great. Like, you think you can take over the world? Awesome. How do I throw some fire on that? Last thing I want to do is throw water on it. Say, oh, by the way, you're more likely to be a failure. Oh, by the way, yeah, it's way harder than you think. Oh, by the way, so I'm a more glass half full kind of person. But what I would say I wish I would have known is two things. It does take more time than what you think. And the other is perhaps recognize your strengths, be willing to admit your weaknesses, and then go find people who fill those holes. So the faster you know what you're not good at, the faster you're going to be successful, because you're going to find someone who is good at that. And so leveraging people in a positive way. Again, what's a good transaction? It's going to add value to both organizations. Find those mutual, opportunities of adding value, and get those people on board as fast as you can. Because an entrepreneur commonly wants to do everything themselves, feels like they have to do everything themselves. Many times is willing to work, 16-hour days because I got to and I can. And the reality is that's probably a recipe most of the time for failure, not for success. Actually, that if you're working 16-hour days, 6 days a week just to make something successful, probably not leveraging people who could help you in your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So blend of ignorance is bliss in entrepreneurship sometimes with, leverage the people who are passionate about what you're doing, who cover your weaknesses as fast as you can.
Great answers. I'm feeling inspired right now. Thank you so much.
Job done then for me. Thanks. It's fun to chat with you guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time and helping us out, answering our questions. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are doing the internship. What a fun experience.